Be it billboard or television advertising, release day stunts for the public, or behind the scenes promotions for the press, video games, much like other media, are always looking for new ways to stand out and get ahead of their competition. However, when it comes to fresh and challenging experiments, you need to be careful and consider, if this is such a good idea, why has nobody done it before? This list will explore some gaming promotions that were such huge missteps that they honestly make you wonder what the studios were thinking. I'm Si for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game promotional tactics that backfired horribly. Number 10. BURNOUT 2 tells players to speed. In the early 2000s, Acclaim Entertainment were continuing to find themselves in financial trouble. Despite video game successes, they weren't bringing in the profits against their outgoings. The logical thing to do was craft a sequel to the highly praised Burnout and to advertise it in an eye-catching manner. To celebrate Burnout 2 Point of Impact, Acclaim declared that they would be willing to pay for any speeding tickets in the UK given on the release dates of their upcoming crash simulator. Understandably, the UK government wasn't all too happy about Acclaim essentially telling its population to freely drive recklessly, and the concept created quite the stink in the media. Following the negative reaction to this, Acclaim changed their mind and cancelled the promotion before the game's release date. One has to wonder if the company would merely pay off speeding tickets, or if they'd be willing to pony up for any medical or funeral costs that this stunt could have inevitably led to. You'd think it would be obvious to most, but speeding in video games is fun purely because real people can't get crushed or mangled. This campaign was the last of a string from Acclaim. Others asked players to name their newborns Turok or advertise Shadow Man 2 on the gravestones of the recently deceased. The company closed in 2004, and with tactics like this, you can't really wonder why. Number 9. The Godfather 2 breaks the law. Movie adaptations of video games can come in all shapes, sizes and qualities, but EA's The Godfather was a surprise success. Rather than attempt to adapt cinematic magic, it adds to the story by unfolding around the events seen in the 1972 movie. Rightfully, EA got to work on a sequel. In order to create a bigger splash, the company developed a version of The Godfather 2 to schmooze the press, which included a set of brass knuckles to reflect a weapon in the game. Except these knuckles weren't plastic or anything, they were real metal weapons. Importantly, owning brass knuckles is illegal in about a dozen states. In fact, they are specifically illegal in EA's home of California, so the hot water the company was in was rising fast. In an attempt to save face, EA asked press outlets to mail the weapons back to them. And in case it needs to be clarified, shipping weapons around the country is also very, very illegal. Whether you believe EA paid off journalists not to talk about this story is up to you, but it is interesting how little traction it got at the time. Then again, EA was saved from public humiliation by a different kind of public humiliation, as press and consumers were mostly just content with mocking the quality of The Godfather 2, which had very middling review scores. Number 8. Fallout NUKA Dark Rum is a sham. Whilst it continues to truck along today, most players have long since departed Fallout 76, and Bethesda's online take for the post-apocalyptic series will go down in infamy. But forget the game for just a moment, the tie-in merchandising was just as rife with blunders. The Power Armor edition of the game contained a WestTech branded canvas bag, which when it arrived turned out to be a nylon sack. Bethesda apologised for this change on release, despite the fact they absolutely should have told fans who had pre-ordered beforehand. Things got worse though when the company sought out a promotion with silver screen bottling to create a Fallout alcoholic beverage to celebrate 76's launch. NUKA Dark Rum's bottle design seemed pretty cool until, just like the bag, you had it in your hands. The bomb-shaped bottle was merely just cheap plastic casing that snapped over glass. It was hard to pour and generally was considered to be an awful drink, at least certainly not worth $80 more than the game itself. In both cases, Bethesda obscured the truth to make money. The reaction was another arrow in the hide of a company that was once beloved and now was making more and more mistakes. But hey, if it hurt Bethesda's pride, maybe they could drink it off with an $80 bottle of suntan lotion masquerading as coconut-flavoured rum. Number 7. The Mercenaries 2 causes gridlock. From Acclaim giving the UK the go-ahead to do a little bit of speed limit breaking, we shift gears completely to Electronic Arts causing gridlock and mayhem. The Mercenaries 2 World in Flames really went off the deep end into the bizarre for its marketing tactic. This game, all about destruction and explosions, needed something big and flashy, and so EA elected for giving away free gas for some reason. EA hoped to make the United Kingdom aware of Mercenary 2's release date, and whilst it's fair to say they achieved that, they also created a situation which eclipsed any anticipation for the product. Taking over the Last Stop gas station in Finsbury Park, London, EA announced that they had paid for £20,000 of petrol and were giving it out to consumers to a maximum of 40 quid. Now, back in 2009, it was half the price it is today, but no matter when or where, free petrol is free petrol. As such, drivers all over London raced to the last stop and caused a traffic standstill. Scenes were so hysterical that the police called off the promotion midway through the day. Sure, the stunt made it to the evening news, but was anyone talking about the game? Wait, what game was this promoting again? Number 6. Virtual Boy's Blockbuster rental mistake. Video game rental by the mid-1990s had become a normal thing, and it was actually something that many developers struggled with. The ability for players to try before they buy meant that many would pay a pittance, blitz through a title, and then the company would never get the consumer's money. It was something that had major ramifications on games becoming more difficult, longer, and more replayable. Nintendo of America, however, decided to embrace the Blockbuster video rental chain. After all, their upcoming hardware was hard to explain to consumers who hadn't had a chance to try it for themselves. What was the Virtual Boy, and what did it mean by virtual reality? Paying out a $5 million campaign, NBC would run ads to promote the possibility of renting the Virtual Boy from 3,000 different Blockbuster stores for $10 a weekend. The problem was, unlike Bethesda obscuring the truth, Nintendo were giving fans a look at the Virtual Boy, warts and all. So many people who got early hands-on time with the system would have recognised that it was awkward, stunted, and potentially painful to use for long periods of time. The console was doomed to fail no matter what, but giving people a transparent experience with it let them know to give it a miss. At least Nintendo were being honest, if not misguided. Number 5. Dante Inferno's fake protest. Dante's Inferno is a largely underrated 2010 action game that adapted the Divine Comedy using strong religious and adult imagery. To ramp up to the title, EA developed an extensive array of marketing plans that played into the 7 deadly sins. One of these included delivering a wooden box to press that would continuously rickroll them until they smashed it with a provided hammer, committing the sin of wrath. It was at least successful in getting the game talked about. However, EA were clearly unhappy with the lack of feather rustling the game had done, and so decided to cry wolf. At E3 2009, a protest of around 20 people arrived with picket signs to call EA Electronic Antichrist and make their distaste for the game known. This coincided with the launch of a website that shared the same views, with Web 1.0 style design and bad grammar to boot. Naturally, this was all in the name of promotion, but this fake backlash wound up creating real backlash when Christian groups took umbrage with the way EA portrayed them. The website and remarks at the protest did certainly inflate a negative stereotype of Christians as, in the words of Inside Catholic's Margaret Cabanis, all priggish, thin-skinned fun killers. Either way, people on the whole were not particularly amused by EA shouting fire where there wasn't any. Number 4. PSP's uncomfortable ad campaign. Bad faith advertising followed by companies apologising has become such a commonplace thing in the last decade that it's easy to get numb to the discourse sometimes. Surely these conglomerates aren't this stupid. Pepsi cannot stop a protest. These must be calculated risks to get people talking about the brand. A damaging day or two on social media be damned. In the case of PlayStation, surely no one would have made this white is coming advert without realising what they'd done. This image, which adorned billboards in the Netherlands in 2006, was apparently designed to simply promote the upcoming white version of the PlayStation Portable. What it did instead, justifiably, was cause uproar. The domineering pose of a Caucasian woman in all white clutching the terrified face of a woman of colour didn't seem real. Sony has a weird track history when it comes to advertising their hardware, usually leaning more into the totally bizarre kind of misguided, rather than those that can be seen as genuinely divisive. In a statement, they merely clarified that the billboard was part of 100 images created for the campaign, which have been designed to show the contrasting colours of the PSPs and have no other message or purpose. Weird then that they wound up pulling the campaign a few days later. Number 3. God of War 2 and the Dead Goat. Upon release, the original God of War was a smash hit and was just the kind of new lifeblood that the PlayStation 2 needed in its library of exclusives. So in 2007, in order to build steam at the launch to the game's sequel, Sony hosted a private party and then subsequently had it reported on in official PlayStation magazine. Now, in defence of Sony, they weren't anticipating the Daily Mail of all people to pick up on the party and, in the way that only they can, sensationalise it to the nth degree. The Daily Mail reported that attendees were invited to reach inside a goat's still warm carcass to eat offal from its stomach, and that they were also throwing knives at targets and pulling live snakes from a pit with their bare hands, which seems unlikely. Because, not all that shockingly, almost all of this was untrue. Sony pulled 80,000 copies of official PlayStation magazine from distribution, but the tabloid, rather than attend the party, were basing their facts on a promotional flyer. However, the presence of a rented dead goat from a local butcher's was a sad reality, and Sony admitted fault and poor taste. It was this boundary push that allowed the Daily Mail to absolutely fall over themselves at the opportunity to decry that video games were promoting sacrificial animal slaughter. Number 2. Splinter Cell Convictions terrorist attack. After the original Splinter Cell trilogy, Ubisoft did their best to keep the franchise in the mind of gamers. Sales numbers were falling in the face of the rise of Call of Duty, and Conviction needed to come out swinging in order to succeed. A bar in Auckland, New Zealand was chosen for a bizarre Splinter Cell stunt where an actor started waving a fake gun around. However, the random patrons of this particular pub had no idea what was happening, and soon enough a call was put out to the police. When officers arrived on the scene, they couldn't immediately ascertain whether the actor's weapon was plastic or not, meaning that for a moment they were treating the situation as seriously as any other. Essentially, this could have ended a lot worse. Monaco Corporation, whom Ubisoft had hired to handle the game's promotion, palmed the blame off to a third company. Dwayne Mutu, marketing manager at the firm, said that this was by no means an attempt to get cops down there and get this sort of exposure, this was just marketing gone wrong. Which leaves the question, what was this meant to look like had it gone right? What was supposed to happen? Most people in that pub probably see Splinter Cell and think of a traumatic event, with the wider public reaction being second-hand embarrassment. Number 1. Watch Dogs causes a bomb scare. You'd think that following on from that mess, Ubisoft would have learnt to err on the side of caution, but Splinter Cell Conviction isn't the only game from the studio which has resulted in a call to the police. With a brand new IP to sell, sometimes it's a good idea to think big or cutting edge. When it came to the case of Watch Dogs, a game about political secrecy, hacking and espionage, Ubisoft's marketing team decided to get way outside of the box. At least Ubisoft realised it was best to alert their chosen press before they received a surprise and strange package, leaving voicemails with them as a heads up. However, they failed to do so for 9 MSN and outright panic ensued. I mean, what would you expect to happen? This innocent news and current events website, not even a games outlet, one day received an unmarked sturdy black safe that, upon being tampered with, began ticking. Naturally, this unexplained and now more than slightly concerning delivery led to the evacuation of the building and the arrival of the city's bomb squad. When they cracked the safe open, police were bemused to find a sealed early access copy of Watch Dogs. Ubisoft apologised to 9MSN for any problems caused by their mistake. Problems that probably included a sudden and very visceral realisation of one's mortality. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Which of these do you think is the worst? And of course, let us know of any other marketing tactics for video games that backfired in the most terrible of ways. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.